Okay, so it looks like Kyle Kulinski got into a bit of a back and forth with Beanie Man Tim Pool on the topic of the Electoral College. Now, if you don't know about the Electoral College, it's a system that needs to be abolished immediately. It overrules the popular vote, which is the will of the people. Obviously in the Hillary Trump election, Hillary got like what 2+ million votes over Trump in the popular vote, but still lost the election, which means more human beings cast a ballot vote for Hillary over Trump, but Trump won. Same thing happened in Bush v. Gore, and it's a really horrible system. It really is because, someone in Florida's vote is far, far, far worth more than my vote here in California. In fact, my vote here in California is literally worthless. It is literally useless. Because we already know which way it's gonna go, and there's no real sort of value to my vote. Now, someone in Florida or Ohio, on the other hand, now those, Michigan, Wisconsin, these states, their votes are worth so, so much more. And the system we're supposed to have is one man, one vote. But, there seems to be a bit of a debate on that raging on. So, it looks like AOC had advocated eliminating the Electoral College, and someone responded saying, actually, AOC, eliminating the Electoral College would silence our voices here in Iowa and in many other states across the country. This is just more evidence of how out of touch the Democrats have become. And then Kyle Kulinski responds to that by saying, if it's out of touch to suggest the person with the most votes should win, what do you call suggesting the person with fewer votes should win? Which is, of course, very true. Now, this is where Beanie Man Tim Pool jumps in, okay? He jumps in and says, the Electoral College protects smaller communities from being exploited by big cities. I'm open to a discussion that involves protecting the towns from being outvoted by urban centers, and also finds a better way to elect a president if you have ideas. So this already doesn't make sense, because how does the Electoral College protect smaller communities from being exploited by big cities? What does that even mean? When we're talking about the vote for president, like, I don't understand this, because what you're talking about is as if it's like now the big cities get to vote on shit that happens in the smaller cities and the smaller communities. That's not how the Electoral College works. It's a vote for president of the United States. This is completely irrelevant and just made up. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean being exploited by big cities? I don't understand that at all. And so I don't really know what he's talking about. But also, again, with the current system right now, gives far, far, far more value to people in these smaller communities, which is like weirdly loved. I don't know why. Than really anybody else in any area. You've seen those memes where like there will be people, Republicans, who like post the pictures of like, look at all these red areas, and it's because there's barely anybody in most of those areas. And so, like, when did we decide that democracy was 1 acre, 1 vote? When did we like decide that one piece of land is 1 vote? That's not how it works. It's irrelevant where the hell the people are. It depends on, what the majority of the people in the country want, what they vote for. It's irrelevant where they are. It is completely irrelevant. A nation is supposed to be one man, 1 vote. The Electoral College is inherently, unfair, and it's not okay. And he responds by saying, protect smaller communities is a dressed up way of saying, let the people with fewer votes win. The reason towns get outvoted is because there are fewer people there. Any system that actually abides by one person, 1 vote would of course facilitate the majority winning, and that's very obvious, of course. Like, it's a weird roundabout way of being like, he's right. It's a weird roundabout way of trying to like cover up like the concept of the person with the lesser votes winning, and covering that up in like it protects small communities. I'm like, no, what it really does is it ensures a system in which the person with lesser votes wins. That's what it does. It doesn't have anything to do with, quote, protecting smaller communities. If anything, it really gives these sort of these smaller communities a supremacy in a way, because again, like I said, man, though they're someone in Florida and these other areas, their votes are worth way more than mine. And my vote isn't worth trash. It's not worth trash. And funny enough, Kim Dubin, or Kim Pool, whichever one you want to use, jumped in here and said, think of it like this. One community, 1 vote. A giant metropolis shouldn't outrule 100 separate communities. Cities take on personalities that are unique to them. It's important that they are represented fairly. NYC shouldn't rule over Denver, Anchorage, Honolulu, and Austin. This comment is really stupid, by the way. Why would it be one community, one vote? The whole concept of democracy is one man, one vote, not one community, one vote. Wherever has more people, it's irrelevant. Like, it doesn't matter where the person is. The whole system is one man, one vote. And the idea of making it like, oh, like these communities, and Mike points this out as we're going to look at here, that like these communities are all just sort of one big ball of like the same thing. It's really weird. It's really weird to me. Why shouldn't a giant metropolis outrule 100 separate communities? Why? What is the reason for that? What is the reason for that? I don't understand. Why? Why is that? Tell me. Why should a giant metropolis not rule out 100 separate communities? What is the reasoning for that? I don't understand. If there are more people in the giant metropolis, they should rule out. If there are 100 communities with like 15 people in them, and then you got an area with like 5 trillion people, like, 10,000, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, hundreds, whatever, hundreds of thousands, why would those separate communities outrule a giant metropolis? It doesn't make sense. There's more people in the giant metropolis, so therefore they should win because they have more people. And so Mike Figueredo responds by saying, communities aren't monoliths, one person, one vote, period. Rural communities shouldn't get to have their votes weighted more heavily because there's less people there. That's extremely unfair and undermines the entire point of democracy. He's right. Not only does it undermine the entire point of democracy, you go from going down the route of democracy to doing a complete U-turn. Because instead of the concept of one man, one vote, and also the person with the most votes wins, now you're talking about not one man, one vote. Now it's, one community, one vote, or one piece of land, or 1 acre, one vote. And you're also talking about now, the person with the lesser votes wins, not the person with the most votes. So he's absolutely right. And this actually didn't end right here. So Tim responds to his own tweet saying, for example, I have seen big cities vote to take water rights from poor towns, which resulted in poor small community having no drinking water. So this is a weird example. He doesn't actually have an example. Like he didn't actually put, like, when you say for example, like, you're supposed to give an example. This is not an example. Like, you need to tell us, like, blank happened in real life. An example would be, oh look, this big city outvoted this small community and took their water. And the fact that you didn't actually give me an example and you called it an example actually weighs against your argument because it seems like you don't really have an example. Otherwise, you'd give us an example. This isn't an example. I hate to tell you. But what does the Electoral College, which votes for the President of the United States, have anything to do with big cities voting on anything? What does that even mean? I don't understand. Guys, okay, this is insanely dumb. But we're not even at the tip of the iceberg here, bro. The Senate of the United States. Every state has 2 senators from the United States. California, which, we have a ton of people. I think it's over, I don't know if it's over 36 million now at this point. I don't know. There's a ton of people here in California, okay? We have the same amount as Wyoming, which I believe is the smallest state in the country, as well as Delaware. And I think Wyoming's population is like 350K or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. How unfair is that? A state with 36 million has the same amount of senators as a state with 350K. How is that okay? How is that fair? That's not fair at all. This is not democracy. We're not even at the tip of the iceberg. But what the hell where are these big cities voting to take water rights from poor towns? What does this have to do with Electoral College and voting for the President of the United States? This doesn't make sense. I don't understand this. I don't get it. It just doesn't make any sense. And he doesn't provide an example here either. Despite his claim, for example, that's not actually an example. Kyle then responds saying, it's a very odd conclusion to draw the conclusion, quote, the minority should pick the leader from this, as opposed to say water is a human right and should be protected for all. And then Tim says, I agree. We should devise a system where a majority can't vote to take away the resources from a minority. The fear is that a president will cater to the big cities and then 10 or so smaller but still big cities. And then Kyle responds saying, what you're agreeing to then is a constitutional democracy. Constitution exists to take rights off the table. They're not negotiable. and then everything else is open to the democratic will of the people. If there's a better system than this, I certainly can't think of it. So I don't know. It just seems weird to me. Like we should devise a system where a majority can't vote to take away the resources from a minority. Like if you're voting for president, I don't see how that's like directly voting on that sort of a thing, on taking water or resources from another community. But this is all pretty ridiculous. I mean, that's not actually gonna happen. Like that's not something that's actually gonna happen, and that's obvious because things like water, for example. Obviously, like someone like Bernie Sanders believes in that as a right, a human right for everyone. So he's not just gonna shade the smaller communities. That's not what he's gonna do. You know, it's just simply not something that's gonna actually happen. It's kind of a sort of weird scare tactic to do. It's just simply not gonna happen. But the idea of supporting a system in which the electoral college overrides the popular vote, has basically the candidate with lesser votes winning, giving more value to someone's vote in different areas. It's pretty stupid, I have to say. It's just a bad system. It should be abolished immediately. The electoral college is really, really bad, and there's no threat of like, I don't know, big cities voting to take water rights from poor towns. That's not actually like a thing. It's not actually a sort of thing at all. You just kind of made that up. But anyways, let me know your thoughts on this back and forth down below. Very curious to hear them.